In 2021, millions of leaked files exposed how presidents, billionaires, and royalty quietly hid fortunes offshore for decades. The leak, later called the Pandora Papers, pulled back the curtain on a financial underworld normally hidden from everyone. Strangely, many people shaping anti-corruption laws appeared inside the documents as secret users of offshore loopholes themselves. When journalists realized who was named and how much money was involved, one question dominated everything: what happened here? The story began when an anonymous source approached the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists with an unprecedented digital trove. More than 11.9 million confidential records from 14 offshore service providers suddenly appeared, covering 3 decades of transactions. To understand them, ICIJ assembled over 600 reporters from 150 newsrooms spread across every continent. For 2 years, this hidden army mapped shell companies, traced property deeds, and compared signatures line by painstaking line. Their investigation soon reached palaces in Jordan, presidential offices in Ecuador, mansions in Malibu, and law firms in Panama. The scale alone demanded global attention. 35 current and former world leaders, over 330 officials, countless billionaires. These were not random rich individuals, but the very people promising transparency, fairness, and shared sacrifice to their citizens. Meanwhile, ordinary workers were paying taxes on every paycheck, never knowing wealth was quietly vanishing into distant, sunny jurisdictions. And at the center of it all stood one uncomfortable question: were these structures legal planning or something far darker? Early documents revealed familiar names: Caribbean islands, the British Virgin Islands, and quiet trust companies in the American Midwest. One spreadsheet listed thousands of shell companies, many registered to the same few mailboxes above anonymous law and accounting offices. Another log connected luxury jets, super yachts, and beachfront villas to entities with no employees, no products, and almost no paperwork. Investigators noticed that each company seemed born just before a major deal, then conveniently dissolved when scrutiny might appear. The pattern repeated so often that coincidence felt impossible, yet every individual structure technically followed existing financial rules on paper. Soon, specific stories emerged: a European leader buying a French chateau through layers of shells while campaigning against elite corruption. A king quietly acquiring mansions in London and California as his citizens marched in the streets demanding jobs and justice. A Central American tycoon moved millions into a Midwestern trust, even while his home country struggled with poverty and pollution. Each file showed wealth slipping through borders faster than regulators could respond, always one step ahead of any national law. Even more unsettling, major banks and prestigious law firms repeatedly appeared as architects, guiding clients through this financial maze. Internal emails from service providers discussed privacy solutions and reputation management, almost never mentioning the communities losing critical tax revenue. Whenever one jurisdiction introduced tougher rules, clients were quietly redirected to a friendlier island, or increasingly to certain American states. Trust companies marketed places like South Dakota as safer, quieter alternatives to tropical havens, dressed not with palms, but cornfields. Wealth that once cycled through the Bahamas or Panama now landed in small U.S. towns, guarded by world-class secrecy laws. On paper, everything looked boring: ordinary trust deeds, incorporation certificates, and legal opinions. In practice, billions effectively disappeared from view. Still, the weirdest detail was how some politicians publicly demanded transparency while their relatives appeared in the files owning shells. A reformist leader had spoken about fighting tax abuse, yet documents suggested his family quietly benefited from undisclosed offshore foundations. Another official warned citizens to tighten belts during austerity, while a company linked to him bought a multi-million-dollar coastal estate. In press conferences, they denounced corruption. In private correspondence, advisors discussed nominee directors, secrecy clauses, and carefully timed property transfers. Journalists kept asking, if these structures were harmless, why hide ownership behind layers of substitutes and code names like you-know-who? As data teams cross-checked leaks with land registries and court filings, disconnected dots slowly formed a disturbing, coherent global picture. Money flowed from state contracts, privatizations, and resource deals into shells, then into luxury assets that rarely appeared on declarations. The investigation suggested costs were not abstract. Hospitals underfunded, schools overcrowded, infrastructure crumbling, while taxable money rested untouchable offshore. Several governments promised inquiries once names surfaced, yet some audit committees were conveniently staffed by people also mentioned in documents.
A few officials dismissed everything as perfectly legal planning, carefully avoiding the ethical questions citizens were really demanding answered. Others blamed advisors, saying they signed where lawyers pointed, as though multi-million-dollar trusts appeared like subscriptions accidentally renewed online. Meanwhile, average taxpayers asked why a small business mistake meant penalties, while complex offshore webs brought gentle letters. With pressure building and patterns undeniable, reporters prepared coordinated global stories, hoping a synchronized release would be impossible to ignore. When publication day finally arrived, headlines exploded across continents, naming presidents, monarchs, celebrities, and corporate titans tied to secret entities. Viewers expected a few notorious oligarchs. Instead, they discovered a vast ecosystem linking respectable institutions to fugitives and alleged criminals. One visualization stunned audiences: 1,000 offshore companies tied to hundreds of officials, 2/3 incorporated in a tiny territory. Another chart showed trillions parked offshore, suggesting a shocking implication. Inequality wasn't accidental, but structurally reinforced by design. Citizens watched interviews where some leaders defended themselves confidently, while anti-corruption activists quietly pointed to fresh budget cuts at home. Investigators realized the real twist. People best positioned to reform the system were often personally benefiting from keeping it alive. Suddenly, the story shifted from isolated scandals to something bigger, a hidden architecture explaining why meaningful financial transparency remained so rare. Officially, many experts concluded offshore tools were often used for legal purposes, yet undeniably enabled aggressive tax avoidance and secrecy. Reports from groups like OECD estimated at least $11 trillion offshore, though nobody could reliably measure the overall share. Some analysts argued the real problem was weak domestic laws, saying governments should close loopholes instead of blaming offshore entirely. Others suspected deeper collusion, proposing that powerful interests intentionally kept regulations complex, ensuring only the wealthiest could truly navigate them. Activists highlighted another possibility, that secrecy industries lobby quietly, shaping legislation to protect clients while presenting reforms as impossible compromises. Critics countered that not everyone named was a villain, noting musicians, athletes, and entrepreneurs may have simply followed professional advice. Still, even sympathetic commentators admitted the optics were devastating when leaders preaching sacrifice appeared linked to billion-dollar confidentiality structures. Taken together, the Pandora Papers did not prove every fortune was criminal, but strongly suggested the game itself was rigged. The mystery remaining was less about individual names and more about why societies tolerate such a tilted financial playing field. At the heart of this story lies a haunting image: public budgets shrinking while hidden wealth multiplies behind legal veils. Is this mainly a story of clever but lawful planning, or of deliberate exploitation that laws have failed to anticipate? Are offshore havens necessary tools for global business, or carefully designed escape hatches reserved for those already holding power? After hearing how the Pandora Papers rewrote our understanding of money and influence, which explanation feels closer to the truth?